Good afternoon and welcome. May the Lord give you his peace. Is anyone ready to be challenged? These readings today are kind of challenging, and we need to dig a little deeper to understand, well, what is the Lord telling us here? What he's saying is very consistent with a number of other teachings that he gave. And it has to do with the question of culpability. You know, that we are gifted by God with so many gifts, each one of us, and that those gifts require an accountability to the Lord. And there are other passages where Jesus will say things like, to whom much is given, much will be expected. You know, when we're judged by God at the end of life, he judges us with love and with mercy, but also with truth, you know, and we have our daily decisions that we make and the things we choose or don't choose to do. And yet there's another dimension that's being expounded upon today, and that has to do with what appears to be a comparison between peoples. So Jesus makes the comment that at the resurrection, at the end of time, when all of humanity is before God's throne, everyone who's ever lived, he says things such as the Queen of the South will rise and condemn this generation so this is the woman who came and traveled a far distance to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And yet there's something greater than Solomon here. Jesus, you know, so for the people who literally were in the presence of the Messiah, literally hearing the words of God himself, that was, you know, and yet rejected him and refused him. And look at this example of this other lady. She did not live at the time of the Messiah, but she went out of her way to pursue God in that she'd heard of the great wisdom of Solomon, and she traveled to go hear his wisdom. That detail is it's a little surprising. It reminds me of a couple of other places. For example, in Matthew 25, Jesus tells the parable of the talents. Remember that? So he's got these three guys, and he gives them different amounts of coins or talents, and then he goes away. And then after he comes back, they get judged. They have to give an account. And you have the one guy who evidently was some sort of a banker or something. He figured out a way to make invest and get more talents, and he's praised. And you have the one guy who did nothing. He did nothing. He buried the coin in the backyard, you know, and then here it is. You can have it back. And in that, the Lord kind of condemns him. He says, take it away from him and give it to the other guy. And to whom, you know, much is given, much will be expected. And so this question of culpability, you know, each one of us have such a unique background, a unique story, right? We can never really judge or evaluate other people. And you never know. You may see a person who, let's say, to you, it appears like they really don't have their act together, you know? And yet, if you really knew that person, if you knew their backstory, if you knew the family they grew up in, if you knew the details of whatever was going on in their own history, maybe they're doing pretty good. You know, like I remember all those years working at a homeless shelter and getting to know the guys. And sometimes you'd hear these stories of like what they went through. And it kind of made sense of why they had the struggles they had. And I realized like, ooh, I didn't have those struggles, you know, my growing up with my family or the things that happened to people. And so you realize that God's judgment on every person will be completely and totally fair, but completely and totally merciful. And yet you think of those who are trying, at least trying, the blessings and the graces that Jesus promised us. Even in one moment, he says, if you just give a cup of cold water to somebody who's thirsty, you will get a blessing. You will get a reward. It's kind of minimal. It's somewhat easy to do, you know? And so those messages are there to encourage us. But then there are other messages like where you understand how maybe we might be culpable for really not responding to his grace. So that is sobering. Huh? That's a pause for reflection here in the season of Lent. This is the time we take a look deep into our own hearts. I think of kind of a shocking example. I know in some countries, Catholics are getting martyred and murdered, you know. And you can imagine standing before the throne of God, and on the day that you didn't go to Mass because you were just lazy or you wanted to take your kid to a soccer game instead, and you're standing next to the little kid who got murdered at Mass that same day, over the other side of the world, there's some perspective, huh? Like, how's that going to feel? And, whew. So, there's that question of culpability. Like, we've been given so much, and it's ironic that it could happen for people who are so blessed are the least grateful. Like sometimes in Harlem, I knew like so dirt poor people, they had like $5 in their pocket. They would put it in the collection basket, and then there were people who were like several homes, quite a few numbers in the bank account and stuff, and really not very generous with their resources. So there's some ironic thing there. And what the Lord is revealing is that in the end, it's all going to be in the light. It's all going to be right there, all in the light. And I don't think the Lord is sharing this with us to make us feel anxious or nervous or afraid, but yet to feel inspired to answer the call. That every day, Catholic perspective is this: every day is a gift. We're here, we're alive. We've got this day the Lord has given us. Like, let's try to do something good. Let's try to be generous with the Lord, with our time, our resources, our prayer, that we can make good use of what's the time that's given us, and to be at peace. We can do what we can do, and that's what God is asking us to do, and not to worry about what other people might be doing or not doing, but rather to just stay humble and to do what we can, especially through prayer and gratitude. And so on this day, we give thanks to the Lord as all the generations will be gathered together in the end, and that in humility we'll be there, not fearful, but in great gratitude for all the blessings. Amen.